You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing, beautiful listeners. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome back. My voice probably sounds a little hoarse today. Excuse me for that. Hopefully, my editor can adjust the sound maybe a little bit so it's not so annoying. I live in Texas, and the pollen and allergies in Texas right now are ridiculous. Those of you who live in Texas with me, it's crazy, y'all. I have lived here almost 8 years. I have never been impacted by allergies until this year. I feel great. I've had to tell my clients all week, I feel fine. I just sound awful. So I am sorry that I might sound hard to listen to, but I wanted to record this episode while this topic was heavy on my mind and heart. I feel like there just are not enough episodes I can do around this, to be honest. As always, I'm not at all intending this episode around this topic to be the end all be all about guilt or grief. But a couple of thoughts are coming to my mind, things I want to validate and offer. When I talk about topics like this in particular, it really does come from a tender place. So before I get into it, I just want to say this. If you're listening to this episode in the car or in the bathroom when you get ready, or your headphones are in while your kids are in the other room, wherever you are, I think, doing something really brave just by showing up and being willing to look at this and listen to a topic that has really heavy words in the title. Today, we're talking about guilt, specifically that particular kind of guilt that doesn't maybe for you make logical sense. The guilt you feel when you know somewhere deep down, maybe you made the right call. You made the right call to have this life-saving divorce. We are also going to talk about grief and why so many women going through divorce are walking around feeling very sad and heavy-hearted when maybe you expected to feel angry. That often is a very specific experience that I have some of my clients talk about. Like, why am I crying in mediation instead of fighting or angry? Why is the rage that everyone said I would have, or a lot of people told me I should have, why isn't it here? Why is it not showing up in these really hard moments the way that I thought it would? And we're going to talk about this without me telling you just to let it go. I don't even want to say trust the process, because I don't think that is always helpful in these moments. And honestly, I'll speak for myself. It can feel a little insulting to how real this is. This feeling can be. It can be really confusing. That's oftentimes what my clients who are bringing this up to me are saying. This doesn't make sense to me. This feels confusing. They'll even almost apologize. Like, I know I should be angry, but I'm just sad. Like, they shouldn't be. So it's coming up enough that I feel like it's worth talking about and validating and giving voice to. I will do another episode next week going into a little bit more around grief, but specifically the acceptance part of grief and what it actually looks like to acknowledge the hard and hold hope at the same time. But today, we're going to stay just right here in the thick of it, right in the thick of it, because you have to feel it before you can move through it. Let's just start with those of you that might be experiencing or even have experienced guilt because you chose him. You chose your partner. I hear this over and over, and something that I have felt personally too. I'm not just speaking from the outside looking in here. I absolutely felt guilty because my children were experiencing, I labeled it suffering. I felt like they were suffering, but they were impacted, right? They're impacted deeply for the rest of their life because I chose their father. They experienced betrayal. Some of them took on the experience of my betrayal because of his choices. Let that just sit for a second. because that is a weight that is almost impossible to describe to someone who has not felt it. It's one of those experiences that I find hard putting the right words to that. When you look at your kids and you watch them struggle, you see the confusion maybe on their faces, the sadness or the acting out behaviors or the withdrawal, the quiet isolation. And somewhere in the back of your mind, maybe that voice starts to show up. This is your fault, Amie. You picked him. You had kids with him. In fact, my lawyer, one of them at the time, I think I remember telling you all, I didn't super love his personality, yet he got the job done. And he was exactly the lawyer that I needed to deal with who I was divorcing. But man, really, really hard to deal with. He would say very, very blunt things to me that may have been true, but the timing of it and his tone was certainly not helpful. And one of the things that he had said to me in going back and forth and me just really being exasperated with the behaviors that my ex was doing at the time, and he flat out said to me, "Well, you chose him. You picked him. So you have to deal with this." And yes, that's true. And yes, I know, but ouch. And at the time, it really, really hurt because at the time, I was feeling really, really guilty that my children were stuck in the middle of it. That not only did he do this horrible thing to me in my life, but he did it to my kids too. And there was no repair for that. Here is where I feel like that big, heavy pause needs to enter in, and hopefully my editor allows the pause to stay because I don't want to dismiss it. I don't want to dismiss the very real guilt that you would be feeling when you are seeing what you're seeing, perhaps in your children right now, and the heartache and the pain and the despair and all the things that would absolutely make sense why you're going to absorb that and take all of that on and blame yourself. So I don't want to dismiss that. I do want to pull it apart and piece it apart just a little today because that voice is lying to you in a very specific way as well. When you chose to be with your child's father, you made the decision with the information and the version of yourself that you had at the time. You were not choosing the version of him that would later betray you and the children and disappoint them in person or become the person that you now have to maybe even protect yourself and them from. You chose someone that you believed in. You chose someone that said things, did things that made you want to believe them, that made you think you could believe him. You loved him. You were trying to build something real, and it was real for you. What's happening right now and what you're maybe watching in your children is not mistakes made from you as a bad mother. Now, look, ev- I say it and all my clients say it. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. We're talking about two completely separate things. We're not talking about human faculties. We're not talking about the imperfections that every single one of us have. That's what makes you human. What I say happen is that we take on the responsibility of the impact that the partner who did the choosing behavior made. Now, sometimes when we look back, we can see the things that we missed or see the things that we tolerated longer than we wish we had, right? It still doesn't mean that you caused it. That is information you can use moving forward. That is growth, not punishment. The thing about guilt in betrayal, trauma, and divorce is it often attaches itself to the wrong place. So, guilt is supposed to be a signal that we've done something wrong outside of our value system. We've made a choice, didn't align with our value system, and it's that signal that says, "Hey, look at something. Pause, hold on, stop. Look at this. Your behavior crossed a line of around something that we care about. I think a lot of us going through this and a lot of you listening are really carrying is not true guilt. It's what I call false responsibility. It is taking ownership of someone else's choices, of someone else's failures, of pain that was put into motion by things that you did not do. You are not responsible for who he chose to become. You are not responsible for what he chose to do and not do in many cases. You are responsible for what you do now. Let's talk about the kids for a second, because I know that is where the sharpest, at least for me, that's where the sharpest guilt lived. And if I'm being super honest, it still pricks. I still feel the sharpness sometimes. It's not as often. And with having adult children, they've definitely stepped into their own work around a lot of this. And thank goodness for my therapist who continues to remind me what's mine and what's not mine. But I'm human and I don't like watching my children hurt when he shows up in these destructive ways. So yeah, there's those moments where it still feels really sharp. At the same time, I think this is where a lot of the conversation in past episodes with Terry Cole, we were kind of talking about this a little bit, is that yes, your children are going through some really hard stuff. Yes, divorce is difficult for kids. That is absolutely real. And I don't think that any of us need to put a pretty bow on that at all. What research does tell us now, and what I have seen through my own eyes in this work, is that kids do not break from hard things. They struggle when they are alone in hard things. They struggle when their pain is ignored or minimized. They need a parent, one parent who is present, a parent who is honest in age appropriate ways, a parent who does not pretend everything is fine, but also does not make them responsible for managing adult pain. I think for some of you listening, I also really want to acknowledge this. Some of you are navigating very, very complicated, nuanced situations, very high conflict dynamics, some of you, where there is going to be ongoing tension. That was my situation for years. Maybe even situations where your child is exposed to that instability or unsafe behavior. And I want to I want to give voice to that and validate that, because in those situations, your presence matters even more. The presence of other safe people to support them even more. Being steady and regulated parent in the middle of chaos is protective, hard as hell. And yeah, you got to dig deep, which is why, oh my gosh, got to do your work. It's not fair that you have to be that one. But again, if you're the one listening to this episode, I believe there's a part of you that knows you are the one. And despite it being unfair, I believe every one of you are going to step up because you love your freaking children so much. Does it erase the hard? No, but it absolutely creates safety in places where safety is still possible. I did an episode years ago. I think I called it Creating a Healing Home, being the parent that is steady and present where all emotions in that place are safe. I think the role I had was, well, still have, is all emotions are safe here. We can't hurt or harm other people, ourselves, or destroy property, but we get to feel and we get to be real about that. It's hard for everyone in that house, but it's going to be a safe place in that house. So you're the one that is going to create that. You're here, you're there with your child. You're trying to figure out how to do this different, how to show up. The fact that you feel guilty about your kids tells me that you're paying attention. Absent parents don't worry like this, and they don't listen to podcasts like this, and they don't go to therapy. They don't seek out coaching. They don't ask their kids the questions. So the invitation here, even though it can be really, really hard, is to start separating guilt from responsibility. Guilt says I did something wrong. I should repair that, make amends, fix my part of that. Responsibility says something happened and I am now going to decide what I'm doing next. One is going to keep you stuck and one is going to give you your power back. Now let's talk about grief for a minute, because I feel like it might be a little backwards in our culture, or maybe just what I see sometimes on social media. We talk about going through grief like it's a tunnel. You enter, you suffer, and you come out the other side. And while I love the idea of coming out the other side, and I think that there can be another side, and I've even used that phrase before, and moments can feel like that. I also would like to offer a slightly different image that I think might match what we're talking about today a little bit better, because I had this thought, what if grief is not something that you have to force yourself through, but something like that you force yourself through this tunnel, almost like we're forcing this birth canal of pain, right? And we just got to get it out and push it out and pop out on the other side. It feels miserable, right? But what if it can be something that we just allow to move through us? There's a difference between white knuckling your way through grief and allowing grief to do what it's actually there to do. I don't see grief is as a flaw in the system. Sometimes I would feel sad and I would judge myself for feeling sad and wondering, why am I still sad? Maybe I shouldn't be sad. There's lots of variance in how we might look at that. But how are we viewing grief? Are we viewing it like something we have to push our way through? Maybe it can move through us. And if it's moving through us, can we at least stop looking at it like a flaw, like something's wrong or we're not doing enough of something else because we are feeling it? It's not a breakdown. It's so natural. It's so biological in that it's an emotional response to loss. In divorce, especially divorce that comes with betrayal, you're not just losing your marriage, you're losing the version of your future that you thought you were building. You're losing the family structure your kids grew up in. You're losing sometimes your financial, most of the time, your financial stability, your social circle, your identity as a wife in a partnership. I mean, that's just to name a few. You're grieving a person who may still be alive, but is no longer who you thought they were. That kind of loss does have a name. You've probably heard it before. It's ambiguous loss. When the person is still physically here, but the relationship you thought you had is gone. That kind of grief is, I think, so disorienting because there's no clear ending, especially if you have children together and you're still interacting. There's really no clean goodbye. I remember my therapist telling me, you are having one of the worst kind of divorces. And I remember rolling my eyes going, "Oh, well, thank you." But he's like, you're having one of the worst kind of divorces because it's going to be a divorce without closure. There's just this slow, painful realization that what you thought was solid is no longer there. That is complicated. That is layered. Such a disorienting kind of loss. The way that most of us have been taught to handle it is to not handle it, right? To push through, barrel through, put your bootstraps on and get going. And I know there are a lot of creators out there, a lot of coaches out there, even therapists, sometimes people that are saying things like that. And I'm not saying that that's not true. Okay. So hear me correctly here. That is a step. And that's why I'm having part two. And we're going to be talking about the acceptance piece of grief, but we're not there right now. And I think that's really what I want to validate is that if you're not there right now and you think you should be, and you're pushing and pushing your way through, this is why affirmations don't always work. Because if you're not meeting yourself where you are at currently right now, we are not being present. We're doing the should or shouldn't game, which pulls us out of the present and insert guilt where we started, right? Judgment, because we think we should be somewhere other than where we are. Telling yourself to keep going, be strong for the kids, don't fall apart. We can feel that later, except later just keeps getting pushed back, pushed back, pushed back. And when I have women come and they're in the messy middle of it, there is a time where, in order to get through that messy middle of filling out the paperwork and doing all of those really hard, annoying, crappy things that you have to do to get through divorce, I feel like that dig deep, put your boots on, just get done kind of mentality is necessary sometimes to fill out the paperwork. I remember it sitting on my desk in my bedroom in my apartment. I would just walk by and look at it and just get sick. Just avoid, 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 avoid. Oh my gosh. And I would sit down and I'd pull the paperwork out and look at all these. Oh my gosh. I felt like there were 1,000 questions that I had to fill out just to file. It was too much. It was overwhelming. I felt like if I sat there long enough and filled all of this out, I would start to feel sad and grief. And it scared me because I felt like I can't do this right now because it's going to take over. If it takes over, I can't be strong for the kids. I can't fall apart for them because I have to be the strong one because he's not. So there's real complexity here. Is there a time that we have to kind of push things aside, be strong, shove the grief down? Yeah, I think so. Where I think we have to be really mindful and intentional with why we're doing that and for how long. Because on the other side, I think that pushing through and keeping going and being strong for the kids and never falling apart, I think sometimes can get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and shoved and resisted and resisted. And grief that does not move does not disappear. It settles in the body. It shows up as fatigue. And then this is where I see rage that comes out maybe sideways or numbness and the deep kind of numbness that scares you. For me, that looked like driving in my car and noticing a telephone pole or driving over a bridge and just wondering. And for the sake of triggering anyone, I'll just leave it at that. That's real, that kind of numbness. So we have to be really intentional here with grief because there is a balance. I get it. If sometimes we dip our toe in the pool, it feels like it's going to suck us under. When you have to fill out stupid paperwork, you can't go there. You fill out the paperwork and then you allow yourself to go there because we can't keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. If we have this mentality that if I just barrel through and push my way through, then I'll get to the other side. Y'all, I don't really see it working that way because grief is not the problem. It lives in the body and the body needs to move it. When I say let it through, I mean giving grief actual space and scheduling a cry if you need to. Letting yourself feel sad without immediately trying to reframe it or fix it or logic your way out of it. Moving your body, walking, shaking it out, dancing in your kitchen. Grief literally needs a physical exit. Talking to someone who doesn't try to talk you out of it and go into that toxic positivity. Sometimes family, friends that really mean well, truly just are having a hard time with their own emotions when they see you with yours. If you fix yours, then they feel better. You might have some of those people. They don't mean harm. I get that. It might not be the time to try and affirm and positivity your way out of that. Then going back to the kids, I think it's very real and valid that when you feel this kind of grief, or I'll even say anger, it makes sense why you wouldn't want your kids to even hear that kind of deep cry. I felt the same way. For me, my little trick was to take a bath. I would put my whole body under the water. I would allow myself to cry, to yell, to do that ugly kind of cry. That sound that when it comes out of your mouth and you hear it, it almost feels like it's from someone else. I got creative when I felt like I needed to get it out and release it, give myself that. I would just sink underneath the water and let it bury me because I felt like I was being buried in grief, but letting it out. For some of you, there may be other feelings mixed in with grief that you might not want to even admit out loud. Maybe you're feeling relief that the fighting has stopped, relief that the tension in the house is gone, relief that you don't have to live on edge anymore. And if that's you, that does not make you cold, doesn't make you selfish. It means your nervous system finally exhaled. For those of you that are wondering, why am I sad? I should be angry. And this one really does come up so much that I wanted to give it its own little part of this episode because I have heard so many times clients say that they're sitting in mediation and they're hashing out the parenting schedule or the assets, and it just is quite audacious. It's unfair. It's uncanny the way that their partners are acting or behaving. And on one hand, there's a part of them that's like, you should be angry, you should be raging, you should be fighting back. But there's just tears. There's just sad. If you're in court and made it through trial, it's because we couldn't agree, right? There's more of that contentions happening. And so you would think, I should be angry that I'm sitting here having to defend myself or all the things. Why am I feeling sad? Or you're on the phone with your attorney and they're telling you what your ex is asking for. On one hand, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And rather than being angry, your eyes just fill up with tears. Then there's this part of you that's like, why are you crying? You should be furious. You should be mad. What's wrong with you? Maybe people around you are expecting you to be angry and you're not. And then that's confusing you. Or maybe everyone said you were going to be angry and instead you just feel sad. Bone tired, sad, grieving sad. If that is you, and if that is resonating with you, here's what I want you to hear. Sadness and anger are not on opposite ends of the spectrum where only one of them is valid. They are both true and can be both true at the same time. And one does not mean that you are not missing the other. Anger is often what we feel when we feel wronged and we believe that we have the power to do something about it. Grief tends to show up when we are processing what we've lost, when our nervous system is overwhelmed. When your system is overloaded, I see sadness often showing up first. Your nervous system is, at this point, most likely trying to conserve energy. Anger is an action emotion. And so sometimes when we feel anger, it leads to action. But if the nervous system's like, we can't do anything right now, then it sometimes goes to sad. I know that might sound weird, but that's what I often observe when these high stake legal and mediation settings. So in these high stake legal and mediation settings, many women find that what surfaces is not rage, it's that it's an almost unbearable sadness. Because sitting across the table from someone who hurt you, now you're fighting over a life that you used to share. And for many of you, a life that you practically ran. You were the one running the kids everywhere, right? All the things. It is a profound loss of an experience. So every minute of it is a reminder of what was broken. As I'm envisioning that, even for myself, I was sitting on the left-hand side of the courtroom and he was on the right. I remember at one point looking over at him and he was looking straight ahead. And I remember looking over there and just thinking, who are you? Who in the hell are you? And how can you possibly be sitting there saying these things? Because none of it is true. And it is so hurtful. It is so hurtful. And yeah, there's a part of me that felt like I should be rageful mad, but it was so incredibly sad. In that moment, it didn't mean that I was weak. It didn't mean that I was a pushover. It didn't even mean that I was sad because I was in love with him. And it certainly didn't mean that I was going to roll over and let him get what he was asking for, think that he should have. It just meant that my emotional system was responding appropriately to something very devastating. I believe the anger will come or it will not. And either way is okay. They are both very real. You don't have to perform anger to prove that you take what's happening seriously. One of my clients was feeling a lot of sadness, and I think it was during her mediation when her lawyer pulled her aside and said, listen, I need you to get angry here. Because tears were just flowing down. She was just very, very sad. Her lawyer was pushing her to anger. And that's really what made her so confused. And so she was bringing it to me to process through. But it certainly didn't mean that she wasn't taking mediation seriously. If you are someone who is listening to this, who is angry and in that place, and you are furious and you are ready to fight, that is valid too. There is no wrong way to feel your way through this. I want to give you a few things that are actually doable, not like a 10-step plan and not homework or anything, but just some practices that you can try on and see what fits for you. The first one is what I call separating the weight. When guilt is sitting really, really heavy on you, feels like you just have this boulder and it just plopped right down in your lap. try asking yourself whose choices created the situation and just write it down, even if it's just writing it down in your phone, not to assign blame, but to get accuracy, to get reality. Because guilt that belongs to you deserves your attention. Guilt that belongs to someone else deserves to be put down. The amount of times that I had to say to myself, okay, hold on, not mine, yours, not mine, his. I would literally brush it off. If you're watching me on YouTube, I literally would just brush it off and just push it out, push it away from me, imagining that I am literally giving that back because it was easy for me. Not everyone is like this. I know that. But for me, it was very easy to take that on because if I could take it on, then I subconsciously thought that I could fix it for my children and make it better. If I could own some of that, if I could own all of it, is what I was trying to do, then maybe I could fix it. And it does not work that way. It doesn't. I'm so sorry. So asking yourself a simple question: whose choices created this situation that I am feeling guilt over? Sometimes you'll see places where you tolerated things longer than you wish you had. That does not mean you caused this. It means that you're learning. There is an absolute difference between learning from something and being responsible for it. I kind of want to say that again. There is a difference between learning from something. I learned why I stayed longer than I can hindsight 2020 say I wanted to. I can learn from that. And there is a difference between that and being responsible for the choices that cause that harm. Okay. Second one, number 2, give your grief a window, not a weekend spiral, just a window. 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Where do I not have to be okay? When can I just not be okay today? You can journal, you can cry, you can stare out a window, you can sit in your car before you go inside. Grief does not have to be crying, sobbing. It can feel numb. And I want to remind everybody that numb is a feeling. I've had several clients ask about this, so it's coming to my mind. If you created this window and you're like, okay, I'm gonna allow myself to just not be okay, and you find yourself sitting there and it just feels numb, notice the numb and stay with that. That is a feeling. It doesn't mean you're not feeling. Numb is a feeling. If you feel numb, just notice numb. Does it have a temperature? Does it have a color? Is there a texture? Is there one place in your body that feels more numb than another? Slowing that down and being with whatever is your experience is the allowing that I'm talking about. Give grief, however it's showing up, a place to show up so that it doesn't have to ambush you in those unexpected moments either. Some days, nothing will come. That's okay. The window still matters because you're teaching your body that there's a space for the feeling when it does show up. Number 3, this one is for mediation or those courtroom moments, okay? Or maybe those kid exchange moments. But before you go to that thing, name what you are about to do. I am showing up for my kids today. My tears are not weakness. They are evidence that I love what I'm fighting for. Then take a slow breath, feel your feet on the ground, and just imagine your feet just kind of pushing into the ground a little bit more. Remind your body, I am safe enough to do this. I've got me. I've got my back. If the big emotions get big, it is totally okay to step outside for a moment. It's okay to ask for a break. Regulating yourself is not losing control. It is self-awareness. It is tending to your emotions. It's healthy. Number 4, which may, I think, be the most important, and that is stop waiting until the hard thing is over to let yourself feel it. Because the hard thing is going to be hard for a while. I am sorry if you are new to this and you're just listening and that feels like a big fat wake-up call. It is going to be hard for a while. If you keep postponing grief, you're also postponing healing. They happen at the same time. They really do. And letting yourself feel it doesn't mean flooding yourself with it. Okay? It means allowing it in those manageable doses at a pace that your nervous system can handle. Because like I said before, sometimes we have to hit the pause button because we have to fill out the stupid paperwork. If we're constantly hitting that pause button, we're avoiding feeling, it will catch up. And I see it catch up in ways like autoimmune and chronic illness and chronic fatigue. You've heard me talk about the window of tolerance before. It's been a while, but being in that window of tolerance is finding that window to allow yourself to feel. Window of tolerance isn't void of feeling. We are actually feeling it. We're not avoiding, resisting, or reacting. Sometimes, right now, it might mean doses and even scheduled doses. And that's okay right now. The amount of times that I would pull up to my kids' school, I'd have, 2 minutes before the bell rang and all the kids would come out and kids would start piling in the car. I would just put my head in my hands. I would just cry and scream, which I learned painfully that I have to plug my ears because screaming in a car, actually, I swear, made me almost deaf one time. But just letting it out, screaming it out, crying it out, doing that big, ugly cry, pounding on the steering wheel, just that sound, like I said, that sound that can come out of a voice that doesn't sound like yours and it's unrecognizable because it's so filled with despair. And then wiping my face and looking in the mirror to make sure the mascara is not dripping down with all but 30 seconds to pull it together before the kids get in the car. It was 2 minutes, but it got out. And I was able to take a breath and be a little more present for my kids. I squeezed it out. And sometimes we just squeeze it out in doses, in windows. That's okay. So here's what I'm hoping landed today. You can know that you made the right choice to have this divorce, to know that this is what needed to happen, or that you've done everything that you could possibly think of to do to make it work and it just didn't work, and still feel guilty about the cost of it. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. I'm hoping what lands also is that you can be grieving and still be moving forward, that you can be sad in court and still be fighting for your children, that you can feel all of it, the guilt, the sadness, the confusion, the relief. You can still be okay. That feeling the hard thing is not the same as being stuck in it. I really think it's actually the beginning of moving through it. Next week, I want to talk about the acceptance part of grief. And I really want to be clear because acceptance does not mean giving up. I'm going to repeat that next week. It does not mean agreeing with what's happened. It does not mean that we need to say everything is okay or what happened was okay. Acceptance means finding a place where the struggle and the strength can live in the same place, where you can say, this is really freaking hard, and I am still here. Both things, same time. Okay. If today felt like a lot, if something maybe cracked open a little, it's totally okay. It's kind of actually the point. And you don't have to fix it. You just have to let it be real. That in of itself is being the chooser. And when you step into being the chooser, even when you choose to feel, especially when you choose to feel, you really are creating your own healing because you can. Take care, everybody.